Hey everyone, thank you for joining us on our product success session of uh, actually the last of the year now that I think about it, on integrating product processes. Um, we are going to talk about, well, literally integrated product processes is the one for today, but essentially this is just an opportunity for you guys to talk to us about a specific topic. Hopefully we will be doing this every couple of months or each month, depending on how you guys feel about this, and just share some best practices and functionality to make sure that you guys are set up for success. Just so you guys know, we are going to take questions. This is the whole point of this, is to really get you guys to, ask us as the experts or each other anything that you may want to know about or discuss. So you have a couple of options, a couple of ways of doing that today. The first is you could raise your hand. So there's a raise hand option, and you can just get on your microphone and ask us directly. If you're a little bit shy about turning on your mic, no problem. You can also use the chat option or the Q&A option, and I'll be sure to read that back so that everyone can hear it and know what's going on, and then we can discuss it here together. So my name is Andrea. I'm product specialist here at ProdPad, previously a PM2, actually the first ProdPad employee. And my role here is to obviously know everything ProdPad, support the internal team, and I also support the community.
And hi everyone, I'm Emma Sefton. I'm an account manager here at ProdPad. That's Meg in the photo, and I hope she'll stay quiet for all of us today. Previously, I was a product manager at a learn tech company where I actually implemented ProdPad myself as part of embedding product within the business. And I also am a co-organizer and founder of Product Tank Oxford, which I'm going to this evening, which should be fun. Before all of that, I actually was in project management, managing education projects at a university. So as Andrea set out at the start, today we're going to be talking about integrating product processes, specifically looking at who is involved in product within our businesses, where ProdPad sits alongside other business areas and sort of customer facing areas, and also how ProdPad then can help us all with streamlining these processes and sort of combining them together effectively. I think a lot of the examples that I'll give today are more focusing on like software-based products, but hopefully this can also be sort of extrapolated out for other types of products like hardware and services and so on. But we'll use software as the main example. So first of all, I guess we need to clarify what are we talking about when we're describing product processes. And essentially, these are any processes within your organization that surround bringing your products to life. Product doesn't sit in a vacuum. So talking about product as like product teams, they don't sit in a vacuum. You rely on different parts of the businesses who are interacting with customers or potential customers to help to deliver a product and bring it to market. And at a simple level, these could be split into two areas of product processes. The strategic areas, which are more around defining what your products are going to do, or the direction of the product, understanding the problems of your customers, and communicating all of that internally. And then there's also the more tactical side of product processes. So more tangible, I guess, in how are you going to create these outputs and deliver on the product vision and the product roadmap and tracking the processes around that. So these are all integrated together. I think when we talk about product processes, the most obvious process that comes into mind, and I think that there is most resources out there are around, is the process between your product team, so product managers, product owners, and the development or engineering teams. Often this is, in the case of municipalities, a build trap. It's about how to avoid becoming just feature factories and making sure that everyone has a shared understanding of the vision of your product and the why. So this is the main process I think that most people jump to when you think of what's a product process. But product actually includes more than just development and product teams. Everyone else within the business should be and does have an active participation in product processes, from the exec and C-suite, who might be setting out the business objectives as a whole. So what's the direction for your organization? Your organization may be your product, but it may also be not just your product. You might have a suite of products, or your organization might have a completely different business, and product is just a part of that. So they're really heavily involved in setting the direction for the entire business. Sales obviously are interacting with customers, or potential customers rather, on a daily basis. They're gathering feedback about maybe what's being asked around how you differ from competitors, what kinds of problems potential customers are looking to solve, and so on. So that's all valuable information that needs to be fed into the product process. Marketing is essential. You could be building as many new features or improvements to your product as you want, but without having some sort of marketing involvement, how are you going to tell that story? How are you going to get that news out there? Similarly with design, integral to creating good user experiences, so they need to be involved in the product process along the way. And then you have support and customer success, who are interacting with your customers and your end users on a daily basis. And again, they act as a communication point for either communicating about what could be, what's the potential of using your product, or for you help with, sorry, I lost track of thought because the chat keeps popping up in the top. So customer success and support, interacting with your customers, need to be able to not just collect feedback from them, but actually communicate to your customers the vision of your product, the direction of the product, and where you're going. So there are lots of different processes there that are all working both separately. They've each got their own separate processes, but they're all combining into what is the product process. So question time, and time for the next poll, if Andrew wouldn't mind doing the honours. And the question of the poll is, what teams do you collaborate already within ProdPad? And maybe while you guys are filling this in, Andrew and I can sort of share a little bit about how our teams collaborate within ProdPad.
Are you asking me which teams I collaborate with all teams?
Yeah. Yeah, so I mean, with ProdPad, I guess we're quite a sort of, we're not a large corporate business. We don't necessarily have completely split separate functions. We all work together really closely. So Andrew and I work really closely on the customer side of things, and we work closely with marketing and sales, for example. But we're not necessarily, I mean, Andrew's more in the product team than I am, but product obviously using ProdPad on a daily basis. But I know for myself, whenever I'm having a conversation with customers, I'll always look at the roadmap and make sure I'm aware of what's going on so that I can do my job better. So I think all of us really dip into ProdPad and collaborate in there.
Yeah, I think we're certainly in a very unique position in that everyone is actually part of ProdPad. I know that, you know, some teams may struggle or think, oh, my developer's not going to join, or my marketing team's not going to join. But the process behind it and the usability behind it is you know, is really great. So it really makes it easy for anyone to be able to, you know, just pop in, add their own ideas, add feedback, jump into discussions and things like that. So I'm not just saying it because we built it, but because we actually use it on a day-to-day.
Yeah, definitely. And I think being someone that isn't actually on a product team anymore, you know, obviously I use ProdPad from a product perspective when I was a product manager using it, but it's been quite nice using it from the other side as well, and seeing how when you do have all the information that's accessible in there, you can keep up to date with things quite easily. I don't have to ask different people for answers. I can go into ProdPad and find out you know, the status of a certain idea, for example, and also contribute, like Andrea said, like, you know, if I see someone's added a new idea, I can say why I think it's a good idea, or add in feedback from customers directly into ProdPad. So it all goes a long way.
So I don't know if you guys are looking at the polls, but it's really interesting to see that most of you actually use ProdPad to collaborate with your development teams.
Mm.
So thank you for that. Thank you for letting us know.
Yeah, and that makes a lot of sense. Like I said at the start, when you think of a product process, the first one that comes to mind, and the one we hear a lot about when people are adopting ProdPad, is how to make the communication of information between product teams and development easier and more streamlined, which is something we'll come on to later. Fab. So our first port of call will be to look at the strategic aspects of product processes. And let's start off with the product vision, which is a big part of the product process, setting out the vision for your products and helping to communicate that internally within your business. Some of you, well, all of you will hopefully have noticed that we introduced, we've kind of changed the product canvas, and we've also introduced a product line canvas view and a portfolio canvas view, which I'll show you today. So this is how you can use ProdPad to help with your the vision part of your product processes and documenting that in a place that everyone has clear and easy access to, which in this case would be ProdPad. So at the portfolio canvas level, which if you're on advanced and above, you should have access to, we've included the portfolio canvas, which is based on the lean business canvas model. So we've outlined some default sections in there to help you to document your vision for your whole product portfolio, including things like your value proposition, customer segments, and so on. So this is a great space to be able to work through that process of defining the vision and also keep it available for everybody. You can actually change these. So if you wanted to tweak the sections, maybe you don't want to use those titles, you want to add different types of information, you can tweak that as well as the descriptions as well. So portfolio canvas is a great space to document that vision across your portfolio of products. We also recently introduced the product line canvas. So this is very similar to the new product canvas. It enables you to document the vision or a group of products that are grouped together underneath your product line. So again, what's the vision for the product, the description, making sure that you've set out what that product is and isn't, making it easier for everyone to be communicating about the product, talking about the product, sales, customer success, and so on, and there be no misunderstanding about what this product line is going to do. Same with the product. If we go to a product canvas, you've got the same thing that you can set out then on the specific individual product level, making sure that everyone's got a shared understanding. And again, you can tweak these. So if you wanted to, I don't know, change one of these sections to be something maybe different about like market analysis or something like that, you can tweak that and change it to suit your needs. So at that highest sort of strategic level of what is the vision for your product, what is your product, then the canvases are a great space to do that. And hopefully you'll, if you are on the Advanced Plus plans, you will have noticed that those canvases are already there and maybe started to add in your own detail. But if not, now you know that they're there. It's very important to document your vision in these canvases. The sort of next level down of from a strategic perspective, you've sort of defined the vision for your product, but who is your target audience? Who is going to be either using the product, or who are you selling the product to? Who's a key stakeholder in the product that you're trying to sell? So we have a space for you to document these personas. If you go to the persona section, hopefully a lot of you have got these filled out, but I know that often, sometimes we forget about personas. I think everyone knows that we should be having personas and we should be focusing on attaching personas to the work that we're doing, but sometimes they get forgotten about, the poor personas. So make sure you've got these filled out. Basically, you have space to create your own personas. for your own product, you can give them a name and you can add the description about, you know, giving that persona more character and setting out what the user, the context of that persona is, and also setting out their behaviors and their goals, their frustrations and limitations. You can have discussions about those personas. So as you're going through that mapping process of mapping out what those personas should be, you can have discussions within ProdPad to refine those, or even when you're reviewing them, maybe on like a quarterly basis or annual basis, you can review them in here too. Or even if you just have a template for your personas, you might create them somewhere else, or you have existing templates, then you can bring those in as well and just give them a name. The benefit of using personas, especially within ProdPad, is it helps with all of your other sort of connected product processes. So when you're reviewing feedback, you can attach personas to those pieces of feedback to help you sort of filter down on the feedback, depending on what personas maybe you're trying to target or doing research on. And same for ideas, you can add personas to ideas as well. And this will just help either when you're scoping out that idea, you can just making sure that everyone's focused on, you know, who's going to be affected by us working on this idea. Or if you want to filter down ideas by a certain persona, for example, if you were looking to create a roadmap card that was about increasing revenue and you wanted to, you had a persona that had purchasing power, you could then filter down on your ideas by a specific persona and then work through those ideas and sort of review them against your roadmap. So personas are really great at adding that extra level of detail and helping to give a focus when you're working on other aspects of your product processes. A really key part of product process, which we've actually dedicated a whole product success session on previously earlier in the year, which you'll be able to find on the help center if you didn't join or you haven't watched it yet. But we often get a lot of questions about managing feedback, and managing feedback actually is a process in its own right, hence why we did a success session on it and developing a process around managing feedback. So I'll touch on it a little bit, forgive me if you were on that webinar. But feedback is key because it helps you to understand the problems of your customers and your users. It helps you to grow the ideas within your backlog. So it helps you to make that prioritization and that ideation aspect of your product processes a bit easier, and make sure really that you're just spending the time effectively to solve customer problems. So a couple of ways that ProdPad helps with getting effective feedback as part of the process is we have a feedback portal that you can either embed on a website or your app or add as a widget, and you can use the form to gather feedback directly from your users. You can tweak the text. So if you wanted to, you know, this is an example from our own feedback portal actually. So we ask like, what would you like to see next from us? But if you wanted to, maybe you had a different terminology around feedback, or you wanted to use it for a specific product, then you can set out the text as you'd like, collect their name and email, and then gather that feedback. One of the great things about ProdPad is we actually try and join together the feedback process with the ideation process. So you can actually highlight existing ideas in your backlog to get specific feedback on, and these might be ideas that maybe are in the future column of your roadmap or the later column of your roadmap, things that you've got identified themes that are a priority for the future, but you maybe are sussing out what kind of ideas might be the best ones to work on or to help with prioritization of those ideas on those roadmap cards. So the this aspect of the feedback portal is really, really useful. If you haven't set up a feedback portal yet, then you know it's a great way to just give that option to make it easy for customers to give you feedback. A couple of other ways that we pull in feedback as part of product processes and make that bit easier is we have a number of integrations to help you to do that. If you're using Slack, then you can add feedback into Slack and it will directly go into ProdPad. So this is great for bringing other teams into that process as well. sales, customer success support, will all be getting feedback from potential customers and customers quite regularly. And if they're actively using Slack, then that's a really easy way to get that feedback in. Similarly, Chrome extension, and I think that as an account manager, that's the one I use the most. It's always in my browser, and whenever I've just had a call or I've maybe had an email through, I can easily add that feedback directly into ProdPad using the Chrome extension, which is basically an extension version of the quick add that's in ProdPad, and it means you don't have to log in to ProdPad itself. And then we do actually have 2 other integrations with tools that maybe deal with feedback slightly differently to ProdPad, which is user voice and doorbell as well. Another option is using Zapier. So ProdPad integrates with Zapier, and you can use Zapier to integrate with lots of other tools that we might not have a direct integration with. A couple of popular examples are with Intercom, Zendesk, and Salesforce. And Andrea, I wonder if you wouldn't mind just sharing a little bit of context about how we integrate ProdPad with Zendesk?
Yes, absolutely. So as you guys may or may not know, or if you've noticed, or if you've ever sent in an email, we use Zendesk to track, basically any email that you might send our way. And what happens often is you guys might send us a piece of feedback, even perhaps you're reporting a bug, and that's where Zapier actually becomes really, really handy. So for feedback, when a piece of feedback comes in, we have a little checkbox that says send to ProdPad. That will then get picked up by the Zapier trigger, and will then create a feedback item within ProdPad. So that's one side, which is sending to ProdPad. There's another side, which is from ProdPad to Zendesk. So when you guys send us feedback, wherever it's from, whether it's from the portal, if you spoke to Emma or Liz or anyone else in the team, it will get added into ProdPad, and then it will create a ticket in Zendesk. There's a couple of reasons for that. The first is we want to make sure that we answer everyone. So just by having that record within Zendesk, it's first of all available to everyone in the team, as of course it is on ProdPad. But we have the ability to then, jump in a conversation with you if we have any questions, or even if it's, I've seen a couple of you just go, is this working? It is working. And sometimes we'll just reply and say, yes, it is working, and say hi in return. So just make sure that we keep that communication constant all the time. Another one that we use is with Trello. That's our development, basically tracking system. So when you guys report a bug, that will get, then just trigger from Zendesk, or if you report it to ProdPad, it'll go from ProdPad to Zendesk to Trello, which is pretty neat. So everything is integrated to each other through that Zapier integration. At some point, we also used to have Intercom to Zendesk to ProdPad. It was a huge thing, but luckily, those systems have integrated a little bit better now. So it's definitely a lot smoother in the way it works. But the whole point of all of that is to say everything goes to ProdPad, and from ProdPad it goes to Zendesk, so that we can get back to you guys about any piece of feedback that you send our way.
Absolutely. Thanks for that example. And I would say that if you are interested in setting up any of these integrations, but you maybe want to have a chat with one of the team about it beforehand, then just reach out to us in either in the app, or send one of us an email, and we'll be happy to discuss how to help you. So obviously managing feedback on its own is like its own separate process, but to join the dots with the ideation side of product processes and that discovery aspect, particularly around prioritization, actually, with every piece of feedback, the main aim really is once it's been reviewed, either it's, you're not too sure what to do with it yet, but you maybe tag it up so that you can find it later, or add personas, products, and so on. Maybe it's not really feedback that you can do anything with, so you archive it. But the main thing to do would be to add it to an idea, either an existing idea in your backlog, or create a new idea off the back of that feedback. So you're building up that evidence then of a need. it might be that one piece of feedback could be connected to multiple ideas, but it helps build up that evidence base and helps you with prioritization. So in this example, you can see that we have an idea in our demo account around FAQ help documentation. You know, that could have been an idea added by someone in support, for example, or someone in customer success, and it, you know, it's probably got requirements set around it. But you can also see how many pieces of feedback you've had that relate to that idea. So if, you know, you've got 12 customers' problems that will be solved if you work on this idea, and you can also filter down that feedback by company type, value type of company, job role, and so on. So you can really dig into the detail then as you're looking to prioritize ideas. So that's how we try and help to join those dots in those two separate processes of managing feedback and your ideas. So poll time again, Andrew, if you do the honors. Do you link your feedback in ProdPad to validate your ideas? Maybe we could talk a little bit about how we do that at ProdPad. Andrew, you manage the feedback processes?
I do, yes, and this might be a good opportunity to answer some of the questions that have come
Oh,
through. Cool. So the first one is, do others keep track of reported bugs in ProdPad together with ideas and feedback? Hopefully not. ProdPad is not a bug tracker, but I did mention earlier that sometimes bugs do get reported. That's because we do have the feedback widget on our site. We have it as well embedded with an intercom that goes in the app. And inevitably, some people, you know, they think I have feedback about a bug, I'll just send it to ProdPad. In which case it does get added to ProdPad, but as I mentioned, through that Zapier Zendesk integration, it creates a ticket for the user anyway, so I can archive it in ProdPad, but it will still be taken care of by the support team. So, you know, kind of just makes it easier on both teams instead of having to copy paste things around. The next question is, how do you draw the line between feedback and ideas? And that is a really good question. I don't know if you want to take that one.
Yeah, so I normally, I think the difference between ideas and feedback is that ideas, you just want a one-to-one relationship with an idea. You know, you only want one version of an idea. Whereas feedback, you want to generate lots, you want to have multiple versions of the same feedback. Now that might look like a feature suggestion or an idea, because often, you know, customers, we can't help but just offer you a solution. So like, I want a search tool, or I want it to be able to do X. So sometimes it might look like an idea, but actually it should always come in as feedback, because actually you need to dig into the problem of why that customer wants that particular feature, or they're describing it in that way, so that you can then understand if their problem could be solved by some of the other ideas that you are exploring in your backlog. So I think that I think the difference between an idea and feedback is more about how they're treated. So idea, you just want one of it. Feedback, you want multiple to build up that evidence base. Just going back to the bugs in ProdPad one as well. So yeah, I agree, like Andrea mentioned, you shouldn't really be putting bugs into ProdPad. If it's just a straightforward bug, it should just go straight into your development tracker, like Jira. The only example where I would say that if you might want to put it in ProdPad is if you've got to justify maybe prioritizing a theme, and it includes maybe a lot of work around particular refactoring or bugs. But as a principle, you wouldn't necessarily put bugs into ProdPad, like Andrea said.
Absolutely. Now I'm seeing that most people are using the feedback section, which is great to hear. A couple are going to start.
Oh, great.
Which is good. I know that we do have a previous success session on managing feedback, so I definitely recommend that you guys watch that. But sort of the short version is what we find really helpful is to nominate someone perhaps in the customer team that can triage that feedback and help, you know, the product team manage it as it comes in. In that case here, it's me. And what I do is daily, I will log in, you know, make sure that I understand what's coming through. If it's a bug, you know, archive it, just make sure that the support team is aware of, you know, how to particularly deal with that issue. If I need more information, I might ping the team member that added it. So, you know, if it happens that it might have come in through Emma, I'll just make sure that, you know, if I have any questions or I need any clarification from the user, I'll just make sure that, you know, we're all on the same page. At the very least, I would suggest if you're moving it into your feedback backlog, make sure that you tag it with something so that it's searchable or findable later on. So it doesn't always have to have an idea. Hopefully most of the time it will, but at least if you tag it with, for example, usability and roadmap, and then at some point your team is looking to improve usability around the roadmap, then you can look for everything with those two tags and then add as a filter, not linked to an idea. So then you'll be able to find everything related to those themes that are currently not related to ideas, and hopefully find a set of ideas that you can work with and thus create, and then hopefully turn into a roadmap card if that's what you're looking to do.
Yep. So speaking of roadmaps, one of the, well, I think one of the key problems that a lot of specifically customers that are coming to us to when they're starting on their ProdPad journey, the main problem they're trying to solve is around communicating the roadmap. So having a transparent and easy to understand roadmap. I think the reason why this is so important is because it helps everyone within your business to work more effectively. Everyone then understands the direction of the product, what's the current focus, what's coming up next, so they can then communicate that to the external stakeholders that they are responsible for communicating with as well. And with ProdPad, there is no excuse to make your product processes transparent, including by providing a open roadmap for everyone to access. We include unlimited reviewers on all of our plans, Essential Plus, so Essential, Advanced, Performance, Enterprise, they all have unlimited reviewers. So this really is because we believe that you should be encouraging your colleagues to actively get involved in these product processes and have access to this information in order to, like we're talking today, help all of the product processes and all of the different processes that they touch work more effectively. So by having this roadmap openly accessible to your other stakeholders, it means that, for example, sales are able to pitch what actually is coming up to customers. If they're on a particular call and someone calls out, you know, a problem they're looking to solve, if by having a roadmap that they can keep up to date with, they'll know that it's maybe not something that not a problem you're currently focused on, but you know it's certainly one that's in the next column. I know that all the time I'm sharing our roadmap with customers when they maybe have a problem that we haven't solved yet, but we're definitely planning on. And the only way I can do that is by having access to the roadmap and being able to keep up to date with it. Similarly, marketing, by having now, next, and later with all of your themed priorities on there, they're able to keep up to date with the problems that the product are looking to solve and look at it from that sort of benefits perspective, and be able to then plan as part of their own marketing strategy and processes, and set that rolling so that it doesn't end up being a waterfall process. By having an open roadmap, everyone can keep their parts of they can keep their cogs turning. It doesn't have to just be passed from pillar to post. Everyone has the access to the information they need. If you're still moving into this approach of opening up product and product thinking to your company, and maybe adding everyone into ProdPad is maybe a step too far at this stage, although we can definitely discuss that with you and help you come up with a strategy to do that, you can publish your roadmap as well. So if there's certain things you don't want to share, you can filter down a specific view based on the roadmap that you're working on, and create a link either to embed maybe on a Confluence page or an intranet, or to share a link so that they can still get that information, but maybe, you know, for whatever reason you don't want them having access to ProdPad. So there's no excuse to let everyone within your business have a clear understanding of the direction of your product. And seeing as that's the main reason that a lot of our customers do come to ProdPad, hopefully you're all doing this in some way, shape or form. And if you're not and you want help with that, then just let us know. We're always happy to help with that. It's something we're very passionate about. So next poll time. Do you use ProdPad to share your roadmap with other teams? And I guess I've maybe talked a little bit about how I use the roadmap to help with my day-to-day. Andrea, I don't know if you want to talk a little bit about how you sort of access our roadmap internally at ProdPad.
Well, I'm part of multiple roadmaps. Yay me. But I am part of obviously that ProdPad app roadmap. We also have a customer team roadmap. For those that haven't read my blog post, we treat ourselves as a product as well. So we make sure that the customer team has a strategy. So Em and I manage a couple of cards there. I'm also part of the marketing roadmap. I don't manage anything there, but I do have, I'm pinged in a couple of projects that I assist with. So as someone who is part of multiple roadmaps, not necessarily managing them directly, it's useful to be able to see across all teams, across, cross-functional teams, to see how our objectives are lining up, making sure that, whatever projects I might have directly with the quote unquote customer team, have the same objectives as the marketing team, because obviously at the end of the day we're still part of the same team, but we have different strategies for the website, as we might have for the rest of the team. And of course it does still need to align with whatever ProdPad as a product, as a company, is looking to do. So for me it's really interesting, like I said, because I happen to be part of multiple ones. Someone said they do share it, but no one looks at it. I'm so sorry. I
Yeah.
hope we can do something to help you with that.
Yeah. I mean, so speaking from when I implemented ProdPad, we never had a roadmap before. And basically the tactic I had to take was whenever someone would ask me for information that was on the roadmap, I would direct them to ProdPad. I would send them a link to the roadmap, or I would just, once they became more familiar that ProdPad was a place to go, they knew sort of where to go, I would just tell them, oh yeah, you can check that on the roadmap in ProdPad. Or I would, basically it's just reminding them that it exists. And like any sort of habit forming, it takes a little while and a couple of times, but hopefully anything that empowers someone and makes it easy for them to get the information, it's just a case of reminding them.
Absolutely. And I'm happy to see that most people answer that they do share their roadmap.
Fab.
Some are still working towards doing that, and we have a couple of people that have no plans on doing that.
Cool.
I'm sure they have their own reasons for that.
Yeah, if you'd like to share, I mean, obviously, if it's a no, but you're working towards being able to, if we can help at all, do reach out to us. And if it's no and no plans to, if you're happy to share in the chat as to why you're not planning on sharing it, I think that'd be really interesting feedback that we'd appreciate hearing. So moving then, so that's more of the strategic side. Moving on to the tactical. And these are more now other business teams that maybe have their own processes that need to tie into the main product process that is owned by the product teams. So starting off with design, and obviously where would we be without our wonderful designers? They help to create great user experiences. So it makes sense that design needs to be brought front and center into the product workflow to help give them all the information that they need and all of the context to create these brilliant designs and help us as we are creating, scoping and validating our ideas. So with ProdPad, obviously designers use their own tools, and they love the tools that they use, hopefully. So we actually integrate with those tools. So whether they're doing designs in any of the sort of top design tools like InVision, Figma, Sketch, Balsamic, and so on, they can pull their designs directly from those tools. Or indeed, if you're using other file sharing tools like Dropbox and Google Drive, you can get those designs in against your ideas in ProdPad. And how you might do that. So once you've added the designs onto your ideas, you can also, if you're uploading files as well, let me start again. So if you're using integrations, then it will link you off to where those files are sitting within like Figma and Sketch and so on. That's often because those design tools already have commenting functionality and so on. So we don't want to replicate something that you're already going to use. Alternatively, if you're going to upload your files, you can then comment within ProdPad on those designs, so sort of replicating that lost functionality then because you're not using something like Figma or InVision. And you can also track versions. So you can add different versions as you're going through that scoping of the ideas and track those as you move along. We also have discussions, so like hopefully you've seen in ideas and on roadmap cards and sort of throughout ProdPad, because we are really focused on collaboration in ProdPad, you have discussions. And so on the designs tab of your ideas, this is where you can have take some of that. You might have to have like lots of different meetings about designs and have lots of conversations about it to help reduce that sort of one-to-one time. You can then work asynchronously and have those discussions within ProdPad instead, mention each other and sort of get that design towards a more finalized stage. So question time again. Do you add your designs to your ideas in ProdPad? And while you do that, I'm just going to take a swig of water.
Wow, most people weren't aware that they could. I'm so glad that we had this session to let you guys know. But yes, absolutely, we do integrate with tons of popular tools. Our designers use Sketch and Marvel. Marvel particularly for the final mockup. For those that have done user testing, you might be familiar with that concept. So yeah, so once we have that, it'll be added to the idea through the Designs tab.
Yeah, so that's really interesting then if people weren't aware, but hopefully now we've shared that with you. It's something that you can look to use and make that part of the process a little bit easier with tying that up between product and design. So the biggie, like I mentioned at the start, and obviously that's the one that most of you were actually integrating with. So development processes. Often something like Jira particularly is one of the most, well, it's probably the most popular integration we have with development teams and bringing that process together. Jira is really the center of the development side of things, but it doesn't support the product discovery and road mapping side of product management very well. So this is where ProdPad complements Jira really nicely. So ProdPad sits upstream of something like Jira or Pivotal Tracker, and it makes sure that that development backlog is clear of any items that haven't been prioritized or fully scoped. So the development backlog just has really well scoped ideas that have been prioritized and are ready to be worked on. So it helps keep that backlog really focused. I know in a previous life, our backlog was called the graveyard of dreams, which no one wants. And I know that every company probably has their own phrase for their backlog, and ProdPad doesn't want that to be the case. We help you to make it, make the development backlog be really clear and full of things you're going to be working on. And ProdPad then takes that weight of opening up ideas and being really open to ideas coming from across the business and helping you to manage that to create really great products. So what this means is by separating out your development backlog from your product backlog or your discovery backlog or whatever you want to call it, it means that both discovery and delivery can work concurrently. So you can do more of that dual track agile business, and it means that you're not a blocker. So I know that in previous experience, because I was in quite a small company and I was trying to balance both the strategic side of product and the execution side of product. And often I kept being dragged into execution and not being able to focus on strategy. But when I implemented ProdPad, it made it so that I could focus on strategy and then keep the execution bit running quite nicely. I didn't have to be as well involved. So ProdPad, by sitting upstream, helps you to keep both processes moving nicely along. So within ideas, You have lots of space to help you to document what that idea looks like, or what that opportunity looks like, what that experiment looks like. You can add user stories if that's something that you're working with, or you can also add things like functional specs, designs like we've just touched on, or if you're doing any sort of documentation elsewhere, you can bring those in as files instead. And like I mentioned before, with discussions on designs, we have discussions in ideas as well. So again, this helps with reducing the number of like separate meetings you might have to have as you're scoping and validating these ideas. But with the added benefit of, as you are sort of making these key decisions, you can keep track of those decision points along that context of the idea as it evolves. And another thing we do to help you, if you've got multiple people working maybe on the same idea and helping with scoping, we have revision history. So at any point, if you want to have a look at what's been changed, you can have a look, keep track of that, and then revert it back if you did need to for whatever reason. Personally, the workflow is I think really, really key, and especially if you're talking about product processes. If you haven't updated your workflow in ProdPad to reflect your own ideation process, then please let it be the first thing that you do after this webinar. The workflow isn't just intended to reflect the development process, which if you've integrated with Jira, you'll have done that mapping, but it's also to help open up that workflow for the discovery stage of your ideation. So in this example, we've got assessment and discovery, but you might also have a design stage, a prioritization stage, a research stage, a sprint planning stage. And by opening this workflow up to your development team as well, they can see what things are coming up, especially with having access to the roadmap. They have full understanding of what the priorities are, so they can make really good decisions when they're building out the features that are ready for development or doing the work that's ready for development. They can make informed decisions because they have a real understanding of the direction of the product, and they kind of know what's coming up in that workflow as well. But another important point about the workflow is it's not just about discovery or development, it's also about that validation after and the feedback stage after as well. Again, because you have unlimited reviewers on Essential Plus plans, everyone in your business can have access to this view. They can't edit everything, if they're just reviewers, they can't touch anything. But what they can do is get a real sense of what's being worked on, so that you don't have to, get lots of answers from the development, or you filled a lot of questions as product managers as to, what's the status of this, when's this coming. People can already access it in the workflow, and then if they need more detail to sort of see the stage of the discussions around the idea, they can click through to that and have a look. So to help with mapping and integrating the development process with the product process and joining the dots there, we have a lot of integrations. Our most popular one is obviously Jira, but we also integrate with Trello, GitHub, Rally, Pivotal Tracker, TFS, and Azure DevOps. So whatever you're using, hopefully it's one of these and you'll be able to integrate directly. Even if it's not one of these, then we have really good APIs that you can use to set up your own integration, and we do integrate with Zapier like we mentioned before. If you haven't set up an integration yet with development, then do let us know and we can have a chat around how to get those processes joined up so that you can get the most value out of using ProdPad. And finally then, on the tactical side, I've chosen marketing as an example, but really this could be for any other of your business units, such as sales, customer success, support. And really it's reflecting on the things that we've talked about so far through the webinar. So from the marketing example, they need to plan their strategy and plan the different campaigns they're going to run, what maybe social they're going to do. The best way that they can prepare for that is to have that information easily accessible for them. So by accessing the roadmap, understanding the key priorities that you're currently focusing on or that's coming up next in the future, allows them to prepare their own work and get most of the groundwork done so that it's ready to roll when things get released. And also with the workflow too, they can see how close things are to being released. that's just an example with marketing, but the same goes for sales, with preparing for sales calls and pitching to potential customers and customer success. From my point of view, working in customer success, if I didn't have access to ProdPad, I'd have to sink a lot of time into asking a lot of people questions. So it just makes other business units' lives so much easier, helps us to do our jobs more effectively, and removes a lot of risk by opening up the product processes and also joining the dots with product with all of these other teams and their own processes. So question time. Have you integrated your workflow with your delivery tool in ProdPad? I think we mentioned earlier that we use Trello as our sort of development tool. Andrew, I don't know if you want to talk a little bit more about how we integrate with Trello?
Sure can do. So we integrate with Trello at different stages of our own workflows. So obviously we use ProdPad for discovery and design and just several other things. So depending on the team, because as I mentioned earlier, we do have at least 4 or 5 different products within our own account, we will then push through those tasks to the relevant boards. So as an example, as part of the discovery process, we have a design board within Trello. So once it has been sent to the workflow, or the idea is placed in the workflow needs design, it will then be passed over to the design team's board within Trello. They will prioritize it as needed, work through it, and then, once they are done, they will then move it on to the next workflow within ProdPad, whichever that might be. I think the next one is needs contents, which then lies with me, but I don't have a board for that, so that's okay. If it's for the customer team, again, we have our own Trello board. So as things are being spec'd and then need executing, those items will be passed on to Trello. We also have, of course, the main development Kanban board. So as with anything else, it just goes through everything it needs to go through, including QA and contacting customers. And then we have a brand new experiments board. So as we find these opportunities to run experiments, we will send the idea over to the experiments board. It'll go through, whatever workflows we have in there that are relevant to then supporting or not supporting, the hypotheses of the particular experiment that we're running. We will then, use Trello to do that execution. And then once it's done, we can pass through the information back into ProdPad. So definitely different ways of using the integration for different teams and different workflows that we might have.
Thank you for sharing that. So do we have the results of the poll?
We do. At number 1, we are not using the workflow.
Oh no, really?
I'm sorry. Yes.
Gutting. Okay, so I'm not going to preach too much. I definitely think you should look at your workflow. It's really a key way to make the most out of ProdPad. It will help you to keep nurturing your backlog. It will help to bring the story of what's going on in development. And if anything, it will also help to make that part of your process transparent. And perhaps that's why you haven't gone ahead and added it in there already, because maybe things are a bit ad hoc at the moment. But if you want to streamline what your processes are, if you're fed up of things coming up last minute and they jump the queue and you don't have any pushback, by having this standardized workflow, you can iterate. It's not set in stone. You don't have to keep it for the next 5 years, but it's a thing that you can, it's like a process that you can work with and learn from and iterate, and it helps make everyone more clear and help everyone to work from the same page.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And almost without surprise, the number 2 is yes with Jira.
Jira. Okay.
So Jira is still our most popular integration. Surprisingly, Pivotal Tracker is next. So it looks like a lot of folks are on Pivotal Tracker.
Interesting.
And we do have a question that just came in, and it's quite a good one. which is regarding the roadmap. Do you use cards as problems to be solved and ideas as practical suggestions to be solved? They find it hard to differentiate ideas from roadmap cards and how they live together. That is a great question. And sometimes people do get a little bit confused. The way I like to explain it, I'm sure Emma's going to give her own feedback on this as well, is think of the card as a way of grouping ideas that go together into what you could consider a potential project. So for example, let's say that you are going to build a new Slack integration. Within that Slack integration, you may want to explore having the ability to allow people to add ideas and feedback, and maybe personas, and maybe reply to, you know, to threads and give thoughts and emoji reactions. And every single thing that I've mentioned just now are different ideas. But how do you then explain to someone what you're doing? You would create a card and say, we are creating a new Slack integration. These are all the opportunities or ideas that may be part of that. As to whether they pan out or not, you know, you'll find out as you're building the particular Slack integration that you've decided to build. But at least you can now communicate to others, you know, why it is that you're working on this and what it is to begin with. So instead of just saying, quote unquote, Slack integration, you can have this card that explains what, why, and then have all those potential opportunities that you can look into within that card.
Yeah, absolutely. So, yeah, my sort of line on it is the card should be a theme or an initiative, the project, like Andrea said, and that should be a headline of a problem or need to be solved. And the ideas, like I set out in the question, the ideas are how you're going to try and solve that problem in all the different ways that Andrea just outlined. There was another thing I was going to say. I know what it was. A really good sense of if you've got the roadmap card and idea level wrong is if you have a card with one idea on it. If it's one card with one idea, you've probably gone too granular on the card. It's probably an idea. And ideas are normally like an epic, a feature, opportunity, and experiment. So yeah, I mean, we're happy to chat more about that. Or if you have any questions, you can use the in-app chat. There's also a great blog post that actually we're going to be sending as a follow-up to the webinar with the recording. That would be great to help remind you of that as well, but hopefully that helps. Right, yes, so to sum up, the benefits of centralizing your processes with ProdPad is it's inclusive, like we said. We don't charge you per user for reviewers who are going to be the other stakeholders in your business outside of the product team. So by using the unlimited reviewers, it allows you to make that process more inclusive and also make it more transparent and open. You know, product isn't hidden, it's not isolated off in a vacuum. No one really knows what magic you get up to. You know, you can really lay your cards out and show people exactly what the process is, and then everyone really understands product, and it can help with adopting product thinking. Another thing that customers often adopt ProdPad is at the same time as they're trying to streamline their product processes. So if you've got multiple product teams that maybe do things slightly differently and you want to maybe align that a little bit more, ProdPad is a great tool for standardizing things. You've got the workflow that actually you can have different saved workflows for different teams. So people can still have their own terminology and things, but you can just have the same like sort of overall approach. And making it more accessible through things like integrating with other tools. So where your design marketing teams might be using something like Trello, your development teams are using Jira, Pivotal Tracker, you can really join the two products together, the two tools together, so that those processes, you know, can talk to each other through ProdPad connecting with them. So that is all we had to share today. We do have a poll for you to complete, which we would really appreciate it and your feedback. It just helps us to make sure that these sessions are useful to you, and we want to do more of them. If you have any more questions or examples you want to share about how you're doing your processes within ProdPad, then use the chat or the Q&A. Yeah, and thank you for joining us today.
We did have a question that came through, and I did answer it, but I thought it was or it would be worth saying out loud in case anyone missed it, which is, how do you handle small improvements that are not big enough for their own card? Now, my answer was, that's okay. Not everything has to go in a card. So think of your roadmap as a way to highlight higher level strategy, but not every single little improvement needs to go through the roadmap. So inevitably you're going to have constant UX improvements, content improvements and whatnot. The important thing is that you understand what problem you're trying to solve with those improvements and answer those validation questions, but they don't have to go on the roadmap. If it's something as small as, changing a label or, anything like that, I think it's okay for it to bypass the roadmap.
I would also suggest as well, like as an alternative view, you could also think about maybe they're not in their own card, but actually are they contributing to maybe another theme or business objective, so they could sit on another card. Sometimes we think about the improvement and just like someone asked before about the roadmap card versus the idea. What problem are you solving through that small improvement? You might already have a card on there about UX improvements for a certain area of the tool, for example. So, or maybe it's about usability, so it could sit on another card. So maybe it's just like Andrea said, it's think about what problem are you trying to solve by that small improvement, and actually is that part of your priority as a business at this stage?
Someone asked a good question, which is, so then do you add that as an idea or a piece of feedback? That is a great question. The basic, sorry, go ahead.
No, go on. I mean, I would say it's an idea because you've identified what this potential solution is. You've identified the opportunity, like assuming that you've already identified what the small improvement is. You might have got that idea though from feedback. So it might be that it came in as feedback, you then created an idea off the back of it. And then if more feedback comes in about it, then you can add it there. So
yes, I would agree. And I would say rule of thumb is generally your internal team should be giving ideas, and feedback would mostly be for your customers. That being said, I think Emma really nailed it when she said, if you've identified the problem, then it's okay for you to add it as an idea. If you haven't identified a problem and it's just a frustration that you have, even if it's using your own product, then add it as feedback. So there are situations where, we ourselves might have a particular frustration with something, but we may not know what any particular solution might be, or even what problem we're really trying to express. It's just, this doesn't work for me, but I don't have an idea to form whatsoever. Add it as feedback. Give the rest of your team feedback and say, I'm having a frustration with this. It's not a fully formed idea in any way, but at least you're helping them understand not just a frustration that you might have, but possibly a customer as well. We have another one. We have an external dev team and have good experience with using the GitHub integration. Great feature. Oh, well, I'm glad you're enjoying that.
That's really good to hear.
And we've got a couple of people saying thank you. A session on the ProdPad API, that's a good one. I think we'll have to get one of our devs in on that. Yeah, definitely. We'll take that one in as feedback. Thank you. I don't think I know enough about the API.
Oh no, I definitely don't know enough about the API, but that would be a really good one as to like what people can do with it.
API +1. All right, we've got 2 people interested in an API success session. So absolutely, we will +2. That's 3 people now. We should have added API as an option. Apologies, but thank you for guys for letting us know. We'll definitely add that one to the list, and we'll see if we can maybe get someone in the development team to talk a little bit about the API capabilities and some cool things that we have seen others do. With that said, I am going to close our last poll if you guys have voted, hopefully. And thank you everyone for attending today.
Thank you very much.